When Evelyn Delaney looked across the folding table at the annual Willow Creek HOA potluck and dropped the words, "Some people in this community have never really helped us," I just smiled, spearing a piece of dry grilled chicken and replying softly, "Really? What about the $47,212 I quietly paid to keep this place from collapsing under your rules?" The plastic cups stopped mid-sip. The whole cul-de-sac went dead silent, except for the distant hum of someone's approved electric mower running at the exact HOA-permitted 10 a.m. slot. Nobody expected the quiet accountant from 142 Oak Lane to have receipts. But I've been planning for this moment for 3 very long years. My name is Rachel Hayes, and at 32, I've carved out the kind of calm life the clipboard queens of Willow Creek never imagined possible. I crunch numbers for Pinnacle Finance downtown. 14th floor cubicle with a sliver of the Rockies on clear days. My little 2-bedroom ranch is paid up. My used Honda is mine. And my credit score sits pretty at 812. No husband. No kids. No drama. Just me. My spreadsheets. And the sweet sound of rent-free peace. Coworkers ask why I'm still single. I smile and change the subject. How do you explain that trust issues bloom best under the shade of an HOA president who once fined you $275 for a mailbox flag hanging 0.3 inches too low? Willow Creek looks like every Pinterest dream. Identical beige houses. Lawns clipped to the sacred 2.5-inch maximum. American flags only. And solar panels hidden like shameful secrets. On the surface, it's peaceful. Underneath, it's Evelyn Delaney's personal fiefdom. She's been president for 5 years. Pastel cardigans. Pearl necklace. Voice like warm honey until the second you step out of line. Then, the violation notices arrive in your mailbox like clockwork. Each one more creative than the last. It started small. The way all HOA traps do. 3 years ago, I paid my first $250 fine for unauthorized holiday lights, left up until January 16th instead of the holy January 15th cutoff. I wrote the check, smiled at the community board meeting, and told myself it was cheaper than arguing. Then came the $1,800 special assessment, when the community pool filter mysteriously failed right after Evelyn's grandson's birthday party. The board claimed unforeseen wear. I paid it anonymously through the online portal because Mrs. Abernathy next door was on fixed income and already crying in her driveway. Small became medium. Medium became monstrous. Last year alone, I covered $9,400 in storm-damaged common area trees because the board couldn't reach consensus on the bid and the city was threatening liens on every homeowner. I wired it from my emergency fund, while Evelyn posted Facebook photos of herself at the country club wearing the exact shade of coral the HOA color committee had banned last spring. Nobody ever said thank you. They just assumed Rachel would handle it. Rachel always handles it. My banking app tells a different story. Every transfer labeled HOA miscellaneous is actually a scar. I kept meticulous records, color-coded spreadsheets, timestamps, screenshots of Evelyn's lavish board appreciation dinners at steakhouses the very week she claimed the treasury was empty. $47,212 over 36 months. That's a down payment on a mountain cabin. That's the master's degree I postponed. That's the price of pretending an HOA is a family instead of a cult with better landscaping. The potluck invite came last Wednesday via the official HOA app, complete with 3 exclamation points and a mandatory RSVP. Annual Community Appreciation Night, 6 p.m. Sharp. Evelyn has wonderful news. I stare at my phone knowing I should delete it. Guilt is a hell of a drug when your dealer wears pastels and quotes the covenants like scripture. I showed up at 5:58 wearing the same navy blazer I wear to client meetings. The clubhouse smelled like overcooked hot dogs and passive aggression. Evelyn greeted me with her signature smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Rachel, darling, you look exhausted. Working too hard again." She air-kissed my cheek and spun away before I could answer. Neighbors milled around plastic tables. Mr. Patel from 108 was already sweating over the exact height of his rose bushes. Mrs. Abernathy clutched her purse like it might sprout wings and fly away. I took my seat at the end of the long table, fork in hand, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Evelyn stood at the podium in her lavender cardigan, gavel in one hand, clipboard in the other. She tapped the microphone twice. "Friends, before we celebrate our wonderful community, I feel I must address something that's been weighing on my heart." Her voice dripped honey. Some residents, bless their hearts, seem to think they can coast while the rest of us carry the load. They never volunteer, never contribute, never truly help keep Willow Creek the paradise we all love. Her eyes landed on me like twin laser pointers. Take Rachel Hayes, for example. Always so busy with her big city job, always challenging our standards. Honestly, I sometimes wonder if she even cares about this community at all. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the sprinkler system click on in perfect HOA-approved intervals. I set my fork down carefully, the smile spreading across my face, not the nice one, the one that makes smart people nervous. I leaned forward just enough for the microphone on my phone to catch every syllable. "You're absolutely right. Evelyn, what's $47,212 between neighbors who never really help each other?" The gas that rippled through the crowd could have powered the entire grid. Evelyn's face went the color of her forbidden coral lipstick. Mr. Patel dropped his paper plate. Mrs. Abernathy's mouth formed a perfect O. Evelyn recovered with the speed of a woman who'd spent decades dodging accountability. I'm sure Rachel is joking. We all know contributions come in many forms." "Oh, I'm not joking," I said sweetly, sliding my phone onto the table so the screen faced her. The spreadsheet glowed under the string lights, every transaction highlighted in yellow, every date, every amount, every excuse she'd ever given. December 2022, $9,400 for the storm-damaged trees you claimed the Treasury couldn't cover. February 2023, $18,000 special assessment for the pool renovation after your grandson's party destroyed the filter. Last August, $20,000 consolidation of disputed fines so the city wouldn't lien the entire neighborhood, plus 37 smaller payments you never even acknowledged. I tapped the total, $47 to 12.47. But you're right, money isn't everything. Community is about being present. When was the last time I came to a potluck without being summoned? When was the last time I smiled while you find Mrs. Abernathy for her flag being up one day too long? Evelyn's pearls looked suddenly tight around her throat. "This is hardly the time or place." Actually, I cut in, voice still velvet. "This is exactly the time and place. You wanted to talk contributions. Let's talk." The rest of the evening dissolved into awkward small talk and sideways glances. People who'd ignored me for years suddenly found reasons to refill their drinks on the opposite side of the patio. Evelyn spent the next 40 minutes smiling so hard her face might crack. I ate my dry chicken, nodded politely, and left at 8:07 exactly, because the HOA app reminded everyone that lingering past sunset without prior approval is discouraged. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and pure, crystallized rage. My hands didn't shake from sadness. They shook from the sheer audacity of a woman who'd spent my money on steak dinners, now lecturing me about community spirit. I pulled into my driveway, killed the engine, and sat in the dark for a long minute. Then I opened my laptop. By 2:17 a.m., I had everything reorganized, Bank statements cross-referenced with Evelyn's Facebook posts showing new patio furniture the week after each emergency. Screenshots of her emails begging for just one more favor from our most responsible neighbor. The evidence was surgical. Sleep never came. Instead, I sat on my back porch listening to the crickets and replaying every manipulation. How had I let 3 years of my life become Evelyn Delaney's personal slush fund, when had helping the community become enabling one woman's ego? Monday at the office was torture. I stared at quarterly reports while my brain ran escape scenarios. My coworker Jessica finally asked during lunch, "You okay? You look like you're plotting world domination." I muttered family stuff, and she nodded the way everyone does when they don't want details. Tuesday afternoon changed everything. My phone buzzed, Evelyn calling. I almost let it ring out, but curiosity won. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Rachel, darling, I wanted to apologize for Sunday. I was under so much stress with the upcoming city inspection. You know how these things are." She paused dramatically. "Actually, there's a bit of an emergency with the clubhouse foundation. The engineer says it's worse than we thought. We're looking at potential $15,000 in emergency repairs, or the city could fine every homeowner." I stood frozen in the parking garage. A foundation emergency? The same clubhouse where she'd hosted her book club wine nights last month? I kept my tone neutral. "That sounds serious. I'll need to see the engineer's report for my records." Of course. I'll email everything tomorrow. We're all in this together, right?" She laughed that little laugh that always made my stomach turn. I hung up and immediately called in sick. Something felt rotten beyond the usual HOA nonsense. That evening I did what I'd never done before. I walked the 2 blocks to the clubhouse after dark. Evelyn's white Lexus was still in the lot. So was the vice president's truck. I crept along the side of the building, grateful for the landscaping that hid me perfectly from the security cameras Evelyn herself had insisted on installing for everyone's safety. Their voices carried through the cracked window. "We need at least 15 grand, the vice president said. That's what the fake inspector quote says." Evelyn's laugh was pure venom. "Rachel will write the check. She always does. Remember how she covered the trees? She can't help herself. Too much guilt. Not enough spine. We just play the medical. Sorry. Structural card right. I'll have my nephew Photoshop the engineer's letter. She won't even question it." The vice president chuckled. "What if she asks for proof again? She'll cool off. She always does. Besides, what's she going to do? Sue the entire HO if she'll transfer the money and go back to her spreadsheets. We'll be sipping mimosas at the next board retreat on her dime." I pressed record on my phone, heart hammering, hand steady as steel. They kept talking, debating whether 15,000 was too greedy, laughing about how I'd fall for it, just like always. The beauty, Evelyn said, was that I never fought back. Until now. I backed away silently, the recording burning a hole in my pocket like a live grenade. By the time I reached my house, my pulse had settled into something cold and calculated. They want to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'm a financial analyst. I weaponize numbers for a living. Wednesday morning, I played the perfect neighbor. When Evelyn texted about the worsening foundation issue, I replied with appropriate concern emojis. When she called that afternoon, voice trembling with practiced fear, I listened to her elaborate lies about structural engineers and emergency deadlines. "The city inspector is threatening to shut us down by next week," she whispered. "We need 15,000 for the specialists and repairs. Insurance covers almost nothing." "Of course. That's terrible," I said, staring at my computer where I'd already pulled up the Colorado HOA statutes. "Which engineer did you hire?" She hesitated half a second too long. "Oh, you wouldn't know him. Local guy. I'll email the report tomorrow." "Perfect." Let her scramble for Photoshop. I had real paperwork to prepare. Thursday, I took a personal day and drove downtown. First stop, my bank. The $20,000 community loan I'd co-signed 3 years ago at Evelyn's tearful request was still in my name alongside the HOA my banker. Patricia raised an eyebrow when I explained. You want to reassign primary responsibility to the board president personally? It's allowed under the covenants if the signer can prove mismanagement, I said calmly. Send the notification certified mail to her address. And flag the account. No more automatic payments from me. Patricia studied me over her glasses. Everything okay? Rachel, getting better by the minute. Next stop, my attorney. Sarah Winters specialized in HOA disputes and had a view of the mountains that made my cubicle look sad. She listened to the recording, whistled low, and pulled up the statutes. Conspiracy to defraud. Fabricated documents. Possible embezzlement. We can go civil or criminal. What do you want? I want out, I said. Clean break. No more financial entanglement. And protection if they try anything else. Sarah nodded. Already typing. We'll draft a cease and desist that any further attempts at financial manipulation will trigger immediate legal action. Keep that recording safe. It's your insurance policy. By Friday afternoon, everything was in motion. The loan reassignment was processing. Legal papers were printing. I'd canceled every voluntary contribution, removed my name from the HOA payment portal, and changed every password. Evelyn called 6 times. I let them go to voicemail. Her texts grew frantic. The foundation is cracking. We need the funds by Monday, or everyone suffers. The fake urgency was almost comical now that I knew the truth. Saturday morning, she showed up at my door. I watched through the peephole as she knocked. Called my name. Even tried the community emergency card through the wood. Rachel, please. The whole neighborhood could lose its value. I stayed silent, recording her performance on my second phone. More evidence for Sarah. She finally left after 20 minutes. Tires squealing on the HOA-approved speed bumps. The weekend passed in strange calm. I cleaned my house, went for a run on the exact path the covenants permitted, had coffee with friends who didn't ask me for money. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying weight I hadn't noticed until I set them down. Sunday night, Evelyn texted one last time. Emergency board meeting Tuesday. Your attendance is mandatory. This community needs to come together. Translation. The fake foundation excuse was collapsing and they needed a new angle. I replied simply, I'll be there. Monday morning I sat in my cubicle assembling the final package. The spreadsheet printed on heavy stock. Bank statements highlighted and tabbed. The loan reassignment documents. Screenshots of Evelyn's social media showing new patio furniture and country club brunches days after each crisis. My phone with the recording tucked safely in an inner pocket. I even stopped at the liquor store for a bottle of good Malbec, far better than the boxed wine they served at board meetings. If this was going to be our last community gathering, I might as well bring something worth drinking. Tuesday evening, the text arrived at 6:33 p.m. Meeting moved to Clubhouse. 7 o'clock sharp. Evelyn. I arrived at 6:55 wearing the same navy blazer. Envelope under my arm. Smile locked in place. The room was packed. Evelyn stood at the head table in her best lavender suit. Gavel gleaming. She looked remarkably healthy for someone whose community was crumbling. I took the seat directly across from her. The air felt thick enough to choke on. Evelyn wasted no time. Friends, we have a crisis. The foundation issue is worse than expected. We need a special assessment and, frankly, some residents who've benefited from this community for years need to step up. Her eyes locked on me. Rachel, we were hoping you could help lead by example. I set the Malbec on the table with a soft clink. Thought we could all use a drink after this. The room shifted uncomfortably. Evelyn's smile faltered. This isn't the time for... Oh, it's exactly the time, I said, voice still soft. You called this meeting to ask for $15,000. Again. But according to you at the potluck, I've never helped this community. So I figure I should stop trying. She laughed nervously. That was taken out of context. I pulled out my phone. Hit play. The recording filled the room. Evelyn's voice crystal clear. Rachel will write the check. She always does too much guilt. Not enough spine photoshopped the engineer's letter. The color drained from Evelyn's face so fast her pearls looked gray. The vice president pushed his chair back like he might bolt. Neighbors stared, mouths open. Evelyn's mask finally cracked. You recorded a private conversation? How dare you invade board privacy? How dare I? I echoed, standing slowly. That's rich coming from the woman planning to defraud the entire neighborhood with fake structural reports so she could pocket another 15 grand. I slid the manila envelope across the table. Inside, you'll find a complete accounting of the $47,212 I've quietly paid this community over 3 years. You'll also find a letter from my attorney. Any further attempts to manipulate, fabricate, or extract money from me will result in immediate legal action, civil and criminal. Evelyn's hands trembled as she opened it. The papers spilled out, every transaction, every screenshot, every lie cataloged in black and white. Her eyes scanned the summary page. The total glowed in yellow. This is ridiculous, she sputtered. You can't just. Actually, I can. The loan I co-signed 3 years ago is now your personal responsibility as president. The bank notified you yesterday. Check your mail. Mr. Patel stood up first. You've been using our money for your parties? Mrs. Abernathy's voice shook. You fined me for my flag while buying new furniture? The room turned. Evelyn's carefully maintained composure shattered like cheap HOA drywall. She tried one last time. Tears, real ones this time, streaming down her face. We're a community. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions. No, I said calmly. Community doesn't plot to steal from its own members. Community doesn't laugh about how gullible someone is while planning the next con. Community says thank you. I picked up my purse, leaving the wine on the table like a mic drop. At the doorway, I turned back once. By the way, I've already filed a complaint with the state HOA Oversight Board. They're very interested in your Photoshop skills. The silence that followed me out the door was the sweetest sound I'd heard in 3 years. No dramatic slam, just the soft click of the clubhouse door closing behind me, locking away the last of their control. I walked home under the perfectly timed streetlights. The weight I'd carried for 36 months finally gone. My phone buzzed once, Evelyn. I blocked the number. Then the vice president's. Then the official HOA app. One by one, I severed every digital tie that had bound me to their dysfunction. The next morning brought 17 missed calls and 43 texts. I deleted them all without reading, sipping coffee on my porch while the sprinkler system clicked on exactly at 7 a.m. My attorney Sarah called at 10:15. Evelyn tried to contact me directly, left quite the colorful voicemail about neighborhood obligations. I sent the formal cease and desist. Any further contact strengthens our harassment case. She paused. You doing okay? Better than okay, I said, and for the first time in years, I meant it. By noon, the community group chat exploded. I watched the notifications pile up before opening it one last time. Evelyn, Rachel has lost her mind. She's trying to destroy everything we've built. The vice president, she transferred the loan. That's fraud. I screenshot everything, attached the recording, and typed my final message. The only fraud here was your fake foundation scam. Good luck explaining that to the state board. Then I left the chat and blocked them all. The real test came 3 days later when Evelyn showed up in my office lobby, wailing about elder abuse and ungrateful neighbors. Security escorted her out with a trespass warning. The guard later told me she screamed the whole way to her car about community values. Weeks passed. The flying monkeys emerged, distant neighbors suddenly concerned about unity. I responded to none of them. The board held an emergency election. Evelyn was voted out 87-3. The new president, a quiet retired engineer, sent me a handwritten note apologizing for the previous administration's overreach. I framed it next to my new Mountain View window. 3 months later, I stood in my same house, now truly mine. With the ridiculous flag, I fly exactly 0.1 inches higher than allowed, just because I can. The lawn is still 2.5 inches. The solar panels are still hidden. But the difference is nobody is coming for me anymore. My bank account grows without the constant drain. I started looking at mountain cabins on weekends. The only contact came through Sarah, a laughably bad legal threat from Evelyn's drinking buddy lawyer with a suspended license. Sarah countered with a recording transcript and a promise of criminal charges. They retreated immediately. 6 months after that final meeting, I received one last letter through Sarah. 6 pages of guilt dressed up as concern. You've destroyed the community. We're suffering. We forgive you for your cruelty. Sarah offered to summarize. I told her to shred it. I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no guilt, just peace. They were simply people I used to know whose poor choices were no longer my emergency. Tonight, I poured myself a glass of that same good Malbec, raised it to the Rockies glowing in the distance, and toasted the $47,212 education that taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Sometimes the most expensive thing you can buy is your freedom, and it's worth every single penny. The city lights twinkled below, somewhere across town, in a beige house with perfect landscaping. A former president was probably scheming her next comeback, blaming me for consequences she created. She'd be waiting forever. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this HOA Karen takedown resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing your own neighborhood nightmares. Sometimes the most expensive lessons lead to the most valuable freedoms. What's your take on toxic HOAs and setting boundaries? Let me know in the comments.